And we are live. It's Jack with John, and we are back for Draft Man Standing. This is our second episode here, and we're going to be doing this every week throughout draft season, leading up to the NFL and NBA drafts. And John, speaking of NFL draft prospects, we had a ton of them in the game last night between Georgia and Alabama. It was a lot of fun. It was one of them. It was genuinely one of the most fun football, I think, in a good amount of time, I'd say.
It was. It had just about everything you could ask for in a football game. There was high drama. There was, a great comeback. There was a star being born. Yeah.
What's going on? We are live. It's Jack back with John, talking several things in draft world here for Draftman Standing episode 2. But most importantly, we got to kick it off. The college football championship game, Georgia, Alabama. A phenomenal contest, a fun one, and really, had everything in it from missed field goals, interceptions, and game-winning touchdowns. John, what was your favorite part of that Georgia-Alabama game?
I think my favorite part was definitely seeing a young player bloom under immense pressure in a national championship game. Tua, coming out there with very limited reps, and I felt like Nick Saban was kind of foolish because his team had played so many blowouts this year, and even last week. That's a perfect opportunity to put your backup in and let him see what he has so he can have some game experience for moments like this. Well, even though he didn't have the game experience, Tua came out and absolutely balled from beginning to end. He threw, I said in our little Talking Ball group chat last night that Tua giveth and Tua taketh away after he...
Welcome back, Talking Ball here. Last draft man standing. Almost went the wrong way there. Our third attempt at the stream here. Hopefully YouTube works with us. John and I are going to be talking about a couple of different things. We're going to start off with the Georgia versus Alabama game from last night. A huge game. A lot of fun to watch and a number of NFL prospects in that one. Then John's going to discuss the quarterback prospects in this year's draft. And I'm going to wrap it up with talking about some of the freshman big men who've been dominating college basketball. So, John, obviously the emergence of Tua was the storyline from last night.
Yeah. Getting, a freshman quarterback in there who had very limited starting time, or he had no starting time, very limited playing time in general, and he just ran the offense very well. He clearly gave them the spark they needed in the passing game. He was very accurate basically from beginning to end. He made a couple freshman plays, but, you got to give him a break. He won the game at the end. And in our Talking Ball group chat, I had said Tua giveth and Tua taketh away after he got sacked on that first down play in overtime. And then he went and threw a touchdown on the very next play to win the game. And even after the game, he was about as calm as could be. Jalen Hurts was pretty calm as well, but he didn't exactly lead the game-winning touchdown drive at the very end either. So Tua's calm under pressure, I think, was just, very special, very unique, for a young gun to go out there. I think he's 19 years old and do that against, a great defense in Georgia was just so special. And, the 2020 quarterback class, you have to be excited with Tua and Jake Fromm and some other guys in there that should promise to be a good one looking forward.
Right. I'm excited to see those NFL prospect profiles from you, John, a couple of years from now. But in all seriousness, one thing that I did want to talk to you about from the game was the fact that Georgia got away from using Fromm. I thought that was an advantage that they had over Alabama early on through the first 3 quarters or so, two and a half, 3 quarters. But it seemed at the end of the game they tried too much of that. What was the package called? Wild Dog?
Yeah, the Wild Dog.
Right. And, they took the ball out of Fromm's hands. And to me, that wasn't the way to go. They'd had so much success even when Tua had come in, and on his second series led Alabama to a touchdown, they responded immediately within 2 minutes. It seemed, with a deep strike from Fromm. So it was strange to me that they went away from it. I understand trying to run the ball, run some clock and all, but they didn't. He didn't throw a pass for 2 straight series. That seemed extreme.
Yeah, I agree. I think they got a little too conservative at the very end. They thought they could just run over Alabama, and clearly you can't do that, or at least you can't do that for an extended period of time. Sony Michel last night played excellent for Georgia. He was agile. He was powerful. He was fast. He looked really good last night, as he has all season. But yeah, getting away from Jake Fromm definitely hurt Georgia at the very end, because he was, I thought they would try to make Fromm throw most of the night, take away the running game, and force him to try to win the game, and they did, and he responded. He played excellent. He really didn't force many throws. His 2 interceptions were not really his fault. One coming because the cornerback ripped the ball away from the receiver, and the other came, a freak play where it bounced off the defender's helmet and landed in, the defensive lineman's hands.
Actually, John, both plays ended up off the defender's helmet.
Yeah, that is true, right? It did bounce off Tony Brown's helmet on the first one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think Fromm played excellent. I think you definitely need to stick. They needed to stick with him going forward, and I think next year they'll lose Michel and Chubb, but obviously they have a guy in Fromm who can make every throw, and is definitely the best quarterback Georgia has had in some time now. So I think going forward, Georgia will be able to continue to be contenders. But last night you were so close. You had a lead against Alabama, and just to let it slip away like that, and then for Papanastos to miss the field goal, which was basically a gimme, and to miss it so horribly, to shank it that badly, you had to feel like, is he going to have any confidence even going into overtime? You felt like Alabama almost had to score a touchdown, because you can't leave it up to your field goal kicker who's missed 2 easy field goals in the game.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, John, because when the sack took Tua and Alabama out of field goal range, or so everyone said, I didn't think they were in field goal range to begin with.
Yeah, right.
Their Papanastros had shown all season, frankly, that he couldn't really hit outside of 40. And it's really quite a strange question that Alabama can't get a good place kicker.
And before tonight or last night, they couldn't get a good quarterback.
Right. And as you said, Fromm might be the best quarterback for Georgia in a long time, but you could definitely say the same thing about Tua, at least the most talented. And that was very apparent from the first time he threw the ball. It's just different. And, let's get back into some of these prospects, though, from last night, because, there could have very easily been 30 prospects out there.
Yeah, there could be like 6, 7 first-round picks in that game last night.
Right, and that's not even really including guys who are currently freshmen who played a ton, and are going to be NFL picks years from now. Right. So, John, who is somebody who's not going to be one of those first-round picks, but really stood out to you last night?
I think someone who's not going to be a first-round pick, but definitely looked impressive, was Georgia pass rusher Lorenzo Carter.
Mm-hmm.
He played excellently last night. Him and the guy, the other edge rusher they have there, Bellamy, I believe his name is. They both played really well. They put constant pressure on both Bama quarterbacks. Even though Tua was, both were able, because of their legs, they were able to get out of it, a decent amount. Both guys really did a great job, though, just keeping pressure on them, not making it easy for them, making them really work for everything they got.
Right.
And I think Carter is a guy who may not go first round, but could definitely be a second or third round pick. And and could be a really solid addition to a team going forward. But really, the first-round picks dominated. A couple of the guys who weren't quite first-round picks, like Ronnie Harrison, I thought he really didn't have a great game last night. He had some bad rushing angles that led to a couple big plays by Georgia. I didn't think he looked great. I thought Tony Brown didn't look too great either, other than that interception. He was burned a couple times. The speedster, wide receiver number 4, I can't quite remember his name, from Georgia, burned him on what's his name?
I think it's Hartman.
Yeah, I think
something
so.
like that.
He burned him for a long touchdown.
Yep.
But the first round guy, Deron Payne absolutely made himself look like a first round pick tonight.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch more of the rest of the season and see just how good he was. But Payne absolutely, with this combination of size and strength and quickness, looked like a first round pick. And then obviously you had guys like Calvin Ridley, who when he got the ball looked good. You have Calvin Ridley, you have Michelle and Chubb, who probably won't be first round picks, but will be solid day 2, day 3 picks, probably day 2. There's Roquan Smith, who has looked so good over these past 2 games. He's looked so good all year. He runs so well. He doesn't look very big. He's listed at 6'1". He looks like he's like 5'11", 5'10" even. He doesn't look very big, but God, he hits like a brick house. He is so good. There's just a lot of guys on both teams that played excellently and that will be high first-round draft picks. This is kind of like the Alabama-LSU game from 2011-2012. I think 2011, maybe even 2010. The Alabama-LSU game in the regular season that was played, where there were just a ton of first-round picks in that game, like Mark Ingram, I think Maurice Claiborne, maybe Michael Brockers, maybe D. Milliner, Drake Kirkpatrick. There were just a ton of guys on both sides who wound up being first-round picks, and I think this is a similar type of really exhibition between 2 great programs and 2 great football factories.
Right. And, for me, as I mentioned earlier, what was notable was the number of underclassmen who stood out. And guys who I'm going to be keeping my eye on for the next few years. Guys like Riley Ridley, who outperformed his older brother. Granted, he had more opportunities, but he was phenomenal. And,
and he only had, I think they said on the broadcast, 6 or 7 receptions the entire year.
Right. I was just going to say that. I think he equaled or had greater receptions last night, as John just said, than he had the whole season. Then, if you look at, there was also Trenton Thompson, who had that hit on Sims, the wide receiver from Alabama, when Sims was, sidestepping everyone, and then he just came out of nowhere and just ran him over like a freight train. But I thought Thompson had a nice game as well. He was flying around the field on the Georgia side. But then you look at Alabama, you got guys like, Raekwon Davis, who had a number of big plays, including, he had a big sack and that interception that deflected off of, I think it was Deshaun Hand's head. And then also Deontay Thompson, I thought he had a number of big plays early on, especially. I think he faded a bit towards later on in the game. He picked up a couple of, I picked up a dumb penalty as well, but he looked very talented and a guy who's going to step up next year in the absence of guys like Harrison and Fitzpatrick. But I
think Levi Wallace definitely looked pretty good. The other Alabama corner.
Yeah.
He played pretty well, and I'm not sure exactly what year he is, but he's definitely someone to look forward to going next year or the year after even. Another great Alabama corner. They produce him every single year at this point.
Yeah.
There were just so many good underclassmen, like you said, Jack. Guys that we won't be able to see this year in the draft, but going forward, we have a taste of what they can bring.
Right. Just the last guy I wanted to bring up for me was Najee Harris. He looked phenomenal.
He was the spark for the running game for Alabama, and they really should have given him the ball more, even though they wound up winning the game.
Yeah, it's very scary to me that Alabama just won a national title, and it appears like they didn't play their best quarterback or running back all season.
Yeah. That is pretty terrifying.
Right. All right. So on that note, for all of you college football fans, let's talk about some of these quarterbacks who are going to be entering the 2018 draft. I think it's, we're still early here, John, so I know you haven't worked through everyone, but at the same time,
I've worked through the Big Five.
The Big Five. All right, perfect. So, and the Big Five for you are, let's clarify that.
Yes, Big Five are Josh Rosen, Lamar Jackson, Sam Darnold, Josh Allen, and Baker Mayfield. I still have to watch Mason Rudolph and Kurt Benkert from Virginia. Mason Rudolph. And there's a few other guys like Mike White and Drew Lock if he winds up declaring. There's a few other guys that I'll have to go watch. But those are definitely the Big Five that people are putting in the first round. So those are the guys I made sure were my priority to watch.
Right, and it always tends to be about 4 or 5 quarterbacks every year, it seems, who are in that range. This year, I think, is especially interesting because there's such a variance to the skill sets that these quarterbacks bring that, someone could go much higher than, maybe the general rankings dictate just because that guy fits a particular scheme better.
Right.
And so that's what's going to make this class interesting. But to me, the storyline early on is that, I remember last year, a lot of the media was very down on the quarterback class. And then a number of them popped up going in the top 15. And Trubisky going 2, which no one saw coming. This year, it seems to be a lot of similar talk, right? They're not very high in the quarterback class, I've heard. And I've even heard that they ranked it below last year's class.
Really?
Yeah.
That's hard to believe.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. To me, John, first off, how would you compare these two classes? And do you think this class has more potential to produce an elite quarterback than last year's?
Oh, absolutely. I think it's not even close, the comparison between this year's class and last year's class. I think last year, there weren't a lot of guys that I really thought were, surefire first round, going to be your franchise player type guys. Even Mitch Trubisky, I thought was, in this year's class, he'd probably be number 4 after Rosen, Lamar, and Darnold. That's why I would probably put Trubisky in this year's class. Pat Mahomes. I'm not sure exactly where I put Pat Mahomes. Maybe around 3 or so. I was a really big fan of his last year. And then you have guys like Deshaun Kaiser and Deshaun Watson, and obviously Watson had the best rookie QB season, even though he played only a few games. Of all of them, I wasn't too high on him last year, but obviously I'm going to have to rethink that a little bit. But yeah, there's just last year's class to me didn't have a defining single caller type guy besides maybe Mahomes, who had everything you wanted. You just wanted to rebuild some of his footwork, and he's definitely looked better in the limited time he's had with the Chiefs. But I think that this year's class, there's star caliber potential with, I would say, 4 out of these 5 guys. I don't think Baker Mayfield is going to necessarily be a star at the next level. But I think Josh Allen, Sam Darnold, Lamar Jackson, Josh Rosen all have potential to be a star. Some greater than others, of course. But, yeah, I think those 4 guys could be franchise quarterbacks. And for teams that need them this year, and there are a few, that's obviously very good news.
Right. So, the draft starts with 2 teams who, as of right now, and your Giants are second, look like they're going to be needing a quarterback.
Yeah.
And so, with that being said, as of right now, if you had to pick, who's going to be 1 and 2?
Well, personally, if I had to pick, I would probably send Josh Rosen to Cleveland because he's just – I think he's the best quarterback. I don't think he's the best quarterback by a lot necessarily, but I do think he's the most polished quarterback. He's the most accurate quarterback. He has some decision-making issues, but all of these guys do. And I just think Rosen is the best player, the best quarterback – not the best player, but the best quarterback in this class. And if you're Cleveland, I think you have to go best player, best quarterback available, because you have to, as much as I do like Deshaun Kaiser and he showed some flashes last year. Um, I don't know if you can, afford another year where your quarterback position is not, even average. So I'm not sold on them going quarterback at 1. I could see them taking Saquon Barkley maybe at 1, and then going and getting a quarterback at 4. But I would pick Josh Rosen if I were the Browns. And the Giants, I would pick Lamar Jackson. I don't think they're going to, because I think they will pick a more, quote-unquote conventional quarterback like Sam Darnold or Josh Rosen, depending on who's on the board. And, the Giants will have a lot of, they'll have basically their choice of quarterback, really. If they can narrow it down to 2 guys that they really like, they're bound to get one of them. So I think that the Giants should go Lamar Jackson. I personally hope they go Lamar Jackson. I don't see them going with Lamar Jackson. My hope is that Jackson will raise his draft stock with his, once people realize that he's not just a quarterback who runs the ball a lot. He's a guy who is a legitimate NFL quarterback who makes legit NFL throws and NFL reads, and, is not a one read and run type of guy. So hopefully his stock will raise itself throughout the off-season process. We'll see what happens. I think his stock really has nowhere to go but up, because he's being looked at as a late first or early second-round quarterback, which I think is kind of absurd. But we'll see what happens with Lamar Jackson and Josh Rosen. But I do think those guys should be the 2 first quarterbacks off the board.
Right, and that can happen. NFL, the coaches and what have you, they're focused on what's going on in the season, and this is the time they finally get to catch up and look at the college prospects. And so that's why you see guys, their stock go up and down at this period of the year, because they're getting an opportunity, bless you there, John, to really to take a look at these prospects. So, lastly here, John, on the quarterbacks before we move on.
Yes.
Just give me some of your, favorite plays or things you've seen. Describe some things that, have stood out to you from the tape you've watched.
Yeah. I guess I'll go through each guy here and talk a little bit about one.
Yeah, go for it.
Starting with Rosen. I've already kind of said, but his polish is so good. His footwork is generally pretty good. His release, his eyes, very good, very disciplined, NFL type level guy. And his throw, he has the most consistently accurate throws of any of the quarterbacks in this draft class. And he did play a lot out of shotgun, but he played in an offense that is very similar still to the offenses that are being deployed today. Lamar Jackson, his running ability, I think he's going to be the most potent runner since Michael Vick. I think he's a little better than Robert Griffin in the open field and being able to create. I definitely think he's better than like Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson in terms of running. He's just so fast and agile. He does things that basically no other quarterback currently in the NFL can do. So I think that alone, and he is a good passer. The myth that he, is not an NFL rated passer is so stupid. It's not even funny. And it's something hopefully that will get dispelled during the draft process. Sam Darnold, his I'm going to stick to tangibles here because a lot of people like to say his clutch and his cool under pressure. And yes, he definitely has that, but it's a hard thing to
measure.
Really look at and point to. Measure, exactly. So Darnold, to me, I think the thing that stands out most to him is just his potential, but also his base. I think he has the base to be a solid NFL quarterback right from the get-go, and he has the potential to be, an Andrew Luck type of player.
John,
if he gets everything set.
John, what do you mean by his base?
His floor right now. His floor right now is still pretty high. But he's also got a lot of potential. So I think he's got a floor of an NFL starting quarterback, and he's got the potential to be, a top 5 type of guy, which I think is really exciting for a team to get him and mold him. And, obviously he's not a finished product by any means, but his potential there is pretty great. Josh Allen, his athleticism not as good as Lamar Jackson, but still pretty special. His improvisation skills are very special, and kind of the same with Baker Mayfield. Good athleticism, good mobility, good improvisational skills. Those are the two things that stand out for those guys. They both have a lot of stuff to work on, and personally, I don't see them as day one quarterbacks. I think they're guys who are going to have to take on day two or later, and really work with them and not push them into the starting lineup right away. Make sure they're set. But yeah, those two guys there's definitely good stuff to like about both of them. Allen in particular can really make some NFL caliber throws. He flashes that ability to do so at Wyoming. And those are really, the big things from the big guys that we're going to be talking about all draft season long. And speaking of big guys, Jack, let's move it over to college basketball and talk about some of the big men that are impressing so far early in the season. Jack, who are some of the names that we should be looking out for the NBA draft?
Yeah, absolutely. So the big guys have been discussed, much about all season long. The presumptive number one pick was Luka Doncic, but the play of DeAndre Ayton, who is the number one guy of these big men, has, usurped him at the number one spot, it seems, or they've been more about co-number ones. And that just goes to show, how well Ayton has played, especially when you consider he's been playing at the 4 spot, which many believe will not be his NBA position, where he'll play at the 5 in the NBA, thanks to the fact that he's playing with another 7-footer currently. But he's just shown so much ability to go along with the freakish athleticism. It's so tantalizing to watch. It's almost an Embiid-esque type presence he brings to the court. The next guy who I would say is number 2 in terms of the big guys is Marvin Bagley. And Bagley, in my opinion, he's not, I wouldn't say the most polished, but he's probably the most NBA ready. And the reason I say that is because his motor is relentless. He doesn't stop going all game long. And, with his size and ability to handle the ball, his jump shot, 3-point shot, and free throw definitely need work. He needs to develop consistency. But, he's going to be a 4-man at the next level. A guy who, with his size, is going to be, a problem defensively once he gets it. Once he really figures it out, gets in terms of the scheme at the next level. But I think more on the perimeter than in the interior, especially because his wingspan is similar to his height, which is rare for an NBA big man. Usually they have a much longer wingspan. But I think for a number of reasons, he'll start out primarily as the 4, despite the fact he's not, one of these traditional floor spacers. But he'll have success immediately in the NBA, and he's a tremendous rebounder. He's averaged over 10 rebounds a game easily, and the guy he doesn't stop moving. So he's going to be very special. But in my opinion, the next 2 guys may have higher ceilings than him. He's got the higher floor, but they may have higher ceilings, and that's Mo Bamba and Jaren Jackson. And the reason for that is, as a guy who loves defense, those guys bring defense. They're both premier shot blockers, up around 3.5 a game. Bamba in particular he just shuts it down in the paint. His length is just ridiculous. It's 7'9" wingspan. But the fact that his offensive repertoire and his aggressiveness have been developing throughout the season are both positive signs to me. Both Bamba and Jackson shoot threes at this point, although both of them are not the prettiest of jumpers. It's just encouraging to see that they're able to do it. And Jackson, though, at Michigan State, in my mind, he is going to be an interesting case because, quite frankly, on the offensive end of the court, he still needs a lot of work. And so I think he may be best as a 5-man as well. He's been playing a lot at the 4 due to, Michigan State just has an abundance of big men. When you look at Nick Ward and Gavin Schilling as well, Ben Carter too. So there's just a number of guys to play at the 5 spot. So he's been spending a decent amount of time at the 4. But if he's a 5-man and he gets into being a rim runner, especially because Jackson is the youngest guy on this list, I believe. He is such a high ceiling that there's a chance that he ends up being, he may be the best guy here, but he also has one of the lower floors. But his defense definitely will bring that up. It's just a question of his offensive instincts. That's really the same questions are with Bamba as well, whether the offensive instincts really develop. And with Bamba, the thing is he's been getting more playing time, and he gets to play the 5 position at Texas, and so you've been seeing that development take place this season. Now, the last guy I want to mention also plays at Duke, and he just hasn't been getting enough attention in my opinion, but he'll go in the lottery for sure. Wendell Carter Jr., he's been a double-double machine as well, and quite frankly, is the true interior presence for the Blue Devils, a shot blocker, a guy who can score with an array of post moves and has a really nice shooting touch as well. There's a lot to like about Wendell Carter Jr. And lastly here, 2 other guys who I think are in the last tier here, but guys who I want to spend more time previewing and looking at their tape as we get closer to the NBA draft. We're still a few months away here, but Bruno Fernando and Brandon McCoy. Bruno Fernando plays for Maryland, and Brandon McCoy plays for UNLV. Both those guys have big bodies, around 7 feet tall, 250 pounds, and really have been emerging this season, especially Fernando, who really came out of nowhere. McCoy at least was a known commodity, but Fernando appears to really have come out of nowhere for the Maryland squad, and has emerged as a guy who looks to go in the 20s, somewhere in the 20s come June. But really, to me, it's been a lot of fun watching these big men because, for many years there had been a large focus on the guards in basketball overall. But these guys have brought back the big man position, and it's definitely been going on for a few years now. But just the number of freshman bigs this year is something that's very rare. I haven't seen it. Especially guys with this size who can also put the ball on the floor, can shoot, and have an array of skills. It's rare, and it's something that has been a long time coming because they've been watching the NBA players. They've watched Kevin Garnett, Kevin Durant, these big men, and the current guys in the NBA have definitely made an impact, and you'll continue to see big men like this for many years to come because these guys aren't growing up and just living in the post. They're handling the ball, shooting threes, and it just made them much more valuable, versatile players.
So, Jack, do you think this crop of big men for the 2018 draft is better than the 2017 draft? About the same? Not as good? What is your take on the draft class as a whole?
Well, just to clarify, are you comparing the draft class to the draft class or this year's big men to last year's big men? This
year's big men draft class.
Okay.
Specifically big men.
Specifically the big men. Gotcha. So, specifically the big men, this class is definitely better than last year. Last year, I believe the first big man off the board was Zach Collins, if I'm correct.
I think you're right.
Yeah, it wasn't a tremendous big man class. Granted, a guy like Harry Giles was supposed to be the guy who went number 1, but it was really dominated by the point guard position. If you remember, guys like Lonzo Ball, Dennis Smith, De'Aaron Fox, Frank Ntilikina, even Donovan Mitchell, depending on how you want to classify him. So really, to me, it's kind of flip-flopped where this year, you have 1 or 2 point guards in Trae Young, Colin Sexton, who are going to go in the lottery as it appears right now. Things do change. We're only just starting conference season, but that's how that'd be my guess at least. And you'll have a number, maybe 6 big men go in the lottery, and 3 or 4 top 6 or so. So